Hi, I'm Amy, and I'm a math addict. Totally kidding, but I do love math. I blog about homeschooling and frugal living at orisonorchards.com. I have 8 kids, ages 6 to 22. My oldest is married and about to start her graduate program. My oldest 3 are in college on full scholarships, and all of my kids have been exclusively homeschooled except for college classes. Enough about me. We're here today to talk about the magic formula for math motivation. Does that sound too good to be true? It's not, I assure you. You'll see. Let's start with a few statistics. After all, we are talking about math.
I hope you can read that. The print is kind of small. The results for this Gallup poll are based on a random sample of 2,059 adults aged 18 and older living in all 50 United States and the District of Columbia. Math is the clear winner when Americans are asked which school subject has been most valuable to them in their lives, followed by language arts, English literature or reading, and science. Math and English were also the top 2 subjects, with math the clear winner when this question was previously asked by Gallup. By how much did math win this poll? That's a pretty good margin. Over a third of Americans, based on the poll, consider math to be the most important subject. I'm sure you can tell what my response would be if I were asked that question. I've always loved math, so I'm kind of predisposed to a prejudice. But let me tell you a short story about my own life.
My husband traveled constantly for work, so it was mainly just the kids and me. 4 kids all by myself was pretty tough, but doable. I'm a naturally ambitious person, though, so when I set out to homeschool, we were going to go the whole 9 yards, from Latin to calculus to physics and everything in between. My oldest was pretty amenable, and we cruised along for a while. By a while, I mean a couple of weeks. Then I realized that I couldn't handle the full-time job of homeschooling on top of being a mom. I was nursing, which means sleeping in small increments at a time. I know you understand. As I added 4 more kiddos in quick succession, I was totally and completely not able to keep up with the homeschooling goals I had set. I could barely manage 3 nutritious meals a day, laundry, and housekeeping. Again, I know you relate. Something had to go for my sanity. I tossed the classical method we'd been following out the window and turned to a cafeteria approach to homeschooling. I picked and chose my favorite elements of each of the homeschool methods and left the rest. What I ended up with was very simple. I mean, incredibly simple. I'm actually a little embarrassed to tell you what we do. But I'll bet you can guess anyway, since math is the topic of this workshop. That's right. The only subject we completed every day was math. Hey, it's my favorite subject. Of course, I taught my kids to read as soon as they expressed the desire, which was usually around age 4. And reading happens at my house. I mean, it really happens. And we don't not study other subjects. Just look at this closet, plumb full of fun things to study. And here's our homeschool closet. I cleaned it up just for you. Sometimes we get out geography puzzles. Oh, there's my favorite tool, my laminator and my binder. Plenty of grammar to keep us busy. Look at all those history books. Oh, and here's our science section. This is a lens kit for studying refraction, and this is part of our chemistry lab equipment. We have lots of experiments there. Here's a microscope, snap circuits, more experiments. Those are Connects, simple machines kits, and our phonics stuff. So we have lots of things to do in here, but day in, day out, the only thing we do is math. I guess you could call us math schoolers. I wanted to study other things too. I had great intentions. We'd work in fits and starts, then things would fizzle out. One time, I was so proud of us, we got all the way through a United States history curriculum. The best part of that was that we bought a used RV and road tripped the United States, stopping at historical sites along the way. But everything else eventually fizzled, except math. Of course, I worried. How would my lovely children turn out? They deserve a great education. I wanted to teach them all the things, but I was up half of every night nursing babies. I could barely get my behind out of bed most days. Well, some days. I knew public school wasn't the answer, so we persevered with math. I was kind of nervous when my oldest went to take the ACT. A few weeks later, we received her results in the mail. We were all on pins and needles as she opened it. 33, bam! A perfect score is 36, and a 33 will get you admitted anywhere, usually with some pretty good scholarships. So we were happy about that, but it still could have been a fluke, except it wasn't. My second child scored even higher, and so did my third. And it wasn't just those college entrance tests. My kids were thriving in their university classes. They each started university classes at a local university at about age 14 or 15, because I think it's stupid to study a subject as a high school class and then again, though more in depth, as a university class. Why not just take the class once and study the material in depth in the first place? My kids were acing those classes too. The only subject we ever studied regularly was math. I realize my story is anecdotal. It's just one family's experience. You might think my kids are just naturally brilliant. But here's the thing. You can learn about history and science by reading. You can learn geography and foreign languages and culture by traveling. You can even learn about writing by reading if you spend your time immersed in great literature. But you can't learn math by reading. Math requires doing. It requires a holy ton of practice to build sufficient familiarity with numbers to have the confidence and the know-how to be able to manipulate them in order to solve equations. My kids learned all the other subjects on their own, through literature or projects, in order to answer their own questions or satisfy their own needs. Even without a formal class, they would have learned basic arithmetic, how to tell time, how to count money. They would have learned those things voluntarily on their own because they're required activities for daily life. They may not have been great at them. I've encountered store clerks who can barely count back change. But their skills would have been sufficient for daily life interaction. But, and that's a big but, they would only have encountered higher math as needed for science. And that would have been slow-going and extremely frustrating to try to understand scientific math concepts without sufficient math background. I hope I've convinced you of the importance of math. Knowing its importance is the first step to being motivated to pursue an understanding. If you don't believe math is important, you'll never be motivated to pursue an understanding of it. It's kind of like nutrition. If you don't understand the why behind eating healthy, you're more prone to just eating candy and pizza and whatever else tastes good to you, regardless of the nutritional content. In case I haven't quite fully convinced you that math is critical to learn, let me give you 2 more reasons. 1, math helps you to think logically and analytically, to understand and solve problems. Logic is reasoning according to strict principles of validity. Analysis is detailed examination of the elements or structure of something. Boy, used together, doesn't that sound like the perfect way to reason through all of the false arguments the world will throw at your children? To think up ideas and find solutions to problems? That's what life is all about. The math skills you use to frame the problem, identify the knowns and unknowns, and the steps you take to solve the problem can be a very important strategy that can be applied to every aspect of your life. Analytical thinking develops the ability to investigate and know the truth about the world around us. Do you want your children to be able to find truth based on evidence rather than emotions? Do you want your children to be able to reach their own convictions? Math teaches us to be alert for error, both ourselves and others, to avoid deception and manipulation. This is possible because mathematics allows us to reason clearly and logically, taking into account real, verifiable, quantifiable data. Mathematics develops the ability to think. Once we understand the problem and have formulated a solution, math helps us to express our thoughts and ideas with clarity, coherence, and precision. The second reason is that learning math is just plain good for your brain. Yes, math helps you to learn to think logically and analytically, but it also improves the actual structure of the brain. It's been proven that kids who know math are able to access certain brain regions more reliably and have greater gray matter volume in those regions than those who perform poorly in math. The brain regions involved in higher math skills in high-performing children were associated with various cognitive tasks involving visual attention and decision-making. If you aren't yet motivated to study math, you're probably a lost cause and should just go ahead and shut this video off right now. Haha, totally kidding. But really, you are the first person who needs to be convinced. Your kids will never believe math is worth studying if you don't. Let me restate that. You will never be able to make your kids care about things you don't care about. Let's be honest, we can't make our kids care about things we do care about. As passionately as I love gardening, my kids just don't give a hang. But it's light years easier to make my kids care about things that I do care about than it is to make them care about things I don't care about. Motivation is internal, not external. That's why I spent the last 10 minutes convincing you of the importance of math. You can't convince your kids of the importance of math if you aren't convinced yourself. Leading is infinitely more effective than pushing. I hope you didn't actually shut your laptop and walk away. I hope I convinced you of the incredible value of math. Once you're a believer, we can move on to the next part of this workshop, which is how to persuade and motivate your children to love math and to voluntarily pursue it. Finally, this is what you all came for. First, I need to admit something to you. I lied when I named this workshop the magic formula of math motivation, because this formula is not magic. It's actually science. Scientists study motivation and how to motivate people and what motivates them and stuff. Let's talk about their findings. Here's the quick question. Do you want to make your kids do things? Get up, do chores, study, be successful. The way to achieve that is to coax, cajole, beg, nag, bribe, push, and eventually punish. Or would you rather help your child pursue things that he's interested in? To not only do the right thing, but to want to do the right thing. I assume the second is preferable. If you're at all like me, you'd rather chew off your right arm than nag. There is nothing worse than nagging. Here's the formula part of this workshop. Since it's about math, we ought to have a formula, right? Are you excited?
Math plus satisfaction equals motivation. Math plus stress and pressure equals avoidance. Doesn't that just make perfect sense? It's so simple, it's really profound. So if you want to motivate someone, you create an environment where they can be successful and feel good about what they're doing. That's the simple, but not magic, unfortunately, formula for internal motivation. We'll keep coming back to this formula, so keep it handy for reference. These formulas are part of your handouts for this worksheet, so you can print them out and put them up on your fridge or wherever you'll see them often in order to help you remember them.
Now let's talk about 7 specific ways to motivate your kids. As a parent, you probably already know a lot about what motivates your children, specifically because you deal with them on a daily basis. Here's the first thing. You need to know the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, so you can encourage a growth mindset in your kiddos. Part of what psychological studies have shown is about different mindsets. You've probably heard a lot of talk about the difference between growth mindsets and fixed mindsets. A growth mindset is when people believe their abilities and intelligence can be developed with effort, learning, and persistence. When a person has a fixed mindset, however, they believe that their basic abilities, intelligence, and talents are fixed traits. Like either they're born with intelligence or they're not. If you've ever said to yourself, I'm just not good at math, never have been, never will be, then you probably have what educational psychologists refer to as a fixed mindset. We assume that our level of intelligence is set at birth and can't change. I'll just give you a quick minute to read this infographic. The infographic is also included in the handouts for this workshop, in case you want to spend more time with it later. You could pause this video, find the handouts, and come back to it in a minute. A growth mindset won't merely jumpstart math motivation. It will jumpstart a motivation to learn all subjects, to practice an instrument more intentionally or at all, and to be kinder to siblings. It will improve all facets of a person's life. A growth mindset is our first key to math motivation. There are a couple of ways to encourage a growth mindset in your children. The first is to question your beliefs about talent. People mistakenly think that talent is the most important factor of success because they don't see all of the hours of practice that go into people's final performances. They don't see a speaker spending weeks writing and memorizing a speech, or all of the pre-dawn hours a swimmer spends perfecting his butterfly stroke. They don't see the author writing and editing and writing, rewriting, and re-editing before his manuscript is finally published. Thomas Edison said that success is 90% perspiration and 10% inspiration. He also said later, in regards to the invention of the light bulb, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work. 10,000. Success isn't about talent and it's not about luck. It's about dogged determination. The second is to expect and be okay with failure and to teach your kids this concept. Failure is a normal part of learning. It's also known as practice. When I'm learning a new piano piece, I begin at half the tempo and miss half the notes. That doesn't mean I'm a failure and should give up the piano. It means I'm learning. I'm practicing. I'll eventually get it perfect, but I never would if I wasn't okay with not playing perfectly right out of the gate. Deliberate and careful practice is where all of the great achievements in the world started. What if Thomas Edison had declared himself a failure and given up after only 1,000 tries at building a light bulb? When we praise children for their intellect or skill level, a perfect score or academic award, it can lead to a performance orientation. They may be motivated to achieve more rewards, but they may also learn to shy away from challenging activities that they might not excel at. Performance pressure increases as children move up in school and is associated with depression and anxiety, in addition to diminished joy of learning. When we praise children for their effort and help them see falling short as an opportunity to learn and improve, rather than focusing on the outcome, they'll be more motivated to work hard and more likely to believe that they can achieve what they put their minds to. You make a lot of mistakes as you work on your weaknesses, which can be frustrating and confusing, but it means you're in the stretch zone. Rather than thinking it's a bad sign and time to give up, this is actually the time to dig in and keep going. Frustration is actually a great sign. People can learn to tolerate their frustration more and more with practice. Failure is not the end of the world. Even if you miss half or more of the problems in a math assignment, nobody will die. The Earth will still orbit the sun and turn on its axis. Another good thing about failing often is that your kids get used to it and know how to deal with it. It's far better that they learn to deal with failure in our homes, wrapped in our arms, than all alone at college, halfway across the world. You don't want them to go around swaddled in bubble wrap, and it's not practical or wise or even healthy. So those two simple things will help your child to achieve a growth mindset. What do growth and fixed mindsets have to do with math motivation? Grab your formula. which mindset equates with satisfaction, and which equates with stress and pressure, and thus avoidance. Cultivation of a growth mindset is the first key to math motivation. Let's talk about our second key element. The second key element is to show your kids why math is important. You can't convince someone to put hard work behind something he doesn't feel is important. Have your kids think of a time he did an excellent job and was well prepared for something. Ask him to recall how wonderful it felt. Or talk about careers, especially future careers in which he might be interested. Make this personal for your child. Excellent math literature and biographies are great ways to communicate the importance of math. Carry On, Mr. Bowditch showed my kids how math saved the lives of sailors, and how Nat Bowditch was able to show every sailor, right down to the lowliest and most uneducated, how to do the necessary math to keep the ship on course. And what about the things we talked about earlier? How math develops the old gray matter in the brain, and how it develops the ability to reason well and think logically and analytically. Understanding the importance of math and seeing how it will benefit their lives ought to be pretty satisfying. Math plus satisfaction equals motivation. Math plus stress and pressure equals avoidance. The third key element is to be inspiring. The best way to motivate is to stop trying to motivate and instead work towards inspiring your child. How do you do that? For me, it means working alongside my children at the kitchen table each morning. Or think about someone in your own life who is inspiring to you and work toward that goal. Remember, the only thing you'll motivate if you're pushing your child is the motivation to resist you. I think of stories from the book Mathematicians Are People Too. Like Archimedes, when he was trying to figure out if the king had been cheated, realized during his bath that metals had different masses and would displace different amounts of water, and ran down the street naked, screaming, "Eureka!" At least that's how the story goes. Or Thales of Miletus, who was just about laughed out of town when he claimed he could easily determine the height of the pyramids. How was that even possible? In the end, he only had to measure the length of his shadow and the length of the pyramid's shadow, and compare the ratio of his known height to the unknown. Have some stories up your sleeve. Remember, the only thing you'll motivate if you're pushing your child is the motivation to resist you. Let's look at that equation one more time.
Math plus satisfaction equals motivation. Math plus stress and pressure equals avoidance. Where does inspiration fit?
Key element number 4 is to set aside time for math, make it a priority, and set clear expectations and communicate them. Let your kids know up front and very clearly what your expectations are. I actually write it on a chalkboard in my kitchen because my kiddos try to push boundaries and I don't want to fight with them. I'd rather just point to number 3 on my list instead of having to argue over why a consequence is happening. Now, I don't mean you have to do math every day from 9 to 10 a.m. Rigidity like that just sets you up for failure. Instead, decide that math needs to happen daily within a routine that already works well for your family. The way that works for my family is that I use meals as the pillars in our day. Morning chores and hygiene have to be completed before breakfast. If you haven't completed those things by the time I serve breakfast at 7:30, don't bother coming. Schoolwork has to be completed before lunch at noon. We set aside 9 to noon as learning time, during which the entire family, including me, learns. A math assignment is required daily, plus I usually prepare something interesting, we call it morning time, to bring the kids running to the table at 9 a.m., just so I don't have to rouse them out of the corners and drag them to the table. It's usually a fun activity from a unit study, but sometimes it's a read aloud, or a math game, or a poem, or a documentary on a subject I'm trying to encourage an interest in. Math is usually the only thing assigned, though. The rest is just cream. And the expected math assignment has to be checked and corrected before lunch. or they shouldn't bother coming. Same thing with dinner. Only practicing is a requirement before dinner. Kids like mine who love to eat will do practically anything to not miss a meal. So those meals are a great incentive. Look at your equation again. Where do clear expectations fit? Okay, let's move on to key element number 5. Allow natural consequences. Right now, your 5-year-old won't care much about college entrance tests or the ability to earn a degree or get a job, so holding that over his head as a natural consequence won't get you anywhere. Instead, think of a consequence that's more immediate. My children love to eat, so meals make great natural consequences for my family. Missing meals is a direct, natural consequence of not having fulfilled expectations. You could also turn the skill itself, or the lack thereof, into a natural consequence. For example, my kids start begging me to teach them phonics at about age 4 because they see the whole family ensconced in books and because they love being read to and they just know that reading is fun and they are missing out. You can do the same with math. Make sure you have some really fun math games on your shelves. When a younger child wants to play, of course let him be on your team, but make sure he knows that he'll be able to play for real once he knows all of his multiplication and division facts. Or once he knows how to count money. Or play a mental math game where your child can see that he will never win until he knows all of his math facts forward and backward, which will motivate him to learn them. You can point out small, daily, natural consequences, or intentionally put your child in a situation where consequences will be felt, or even set up the situations yourself. For example, when I have someone learning about money, I let my children complete a few extra chores to earn money over a couple of days, and then I set up a store at the kitchen table for morning time. I make sure to have a few toys, just dollar store things, and snacks each child will really want, and I let them use that earned money to buy them. But I make sure they don't have enough money to buy all the things they want, so they have to add up different combinations and count out money multiple times and figure out the best way to purchase most of what they want. Games and real-life situations make excellent teachers. Let's look at that formula again. I know I said it was the last time, but this is for reals the last time. I just want to make sure it really sinks in.
Where do natural consequences fit into this equation? Fear of missing out actually creates the opposite of satisfaction, which motivates your child to fix the problem.
That leads me to my 6th key element, which is to gamify math as much as possible. Gamification is taking a necessary math skill or concept and turning it into a game. There's no getting around it. Math just requires practice. You'll never be good at manipulating numbers without being incredibly familiar with them, forwards and backwards, inside and out. Math games are fun ways to gain that familiarity and practice facts without it seeming like drill. I use Saxon math, which has been accurately described as boring. Parents and kids alike complain that it's all black and white, text and numbers, no drawings, no color, nothing exciting. I agree. I just chose Saxon because it's so thorough, and I love the spiral approach that provides plenty of awesome review. And yet, my kids enjoy math because I gamify the most difficult concepts. When given the opportunity, children of all ages spontaneously engage in play. The ingredients of play are precisely the ones that fuel learning. Play is intrinsically motivating. It presents an opportunity for novel experiences and for learning from others. It requires active engagement, and it can strengthen bonds and reduce stress. Where do you think gamification fits into that formula? I'd say math games feel pretty satisfying. Okay, let's look at key element number 7. Encourage your kids to find their own answers in order to build confidence. Did you know that lack of confidence is the number one problem behind a dislike of math? Yep. Kids who are internally motivated to learn math are confident in their abilities to perform math. You can develop your child's internal motivation by encouraging his sense of control and strengthening his confidence in his own problem-solving abilities. Next time your child asks you a question, even if you know the answer, pause. Don't jump in with immediate solutions. Not only are you motivating your child to find the answer, but you may also open up a whole new avenue of curiosity. And a curious child is a motivated one. Ask questions that encourage deeper thinking on your kiddo's part. Mom, I can't figure this out. Did you write all the steps down? Or first, did you write the problem down? Did you balance the equation? Did you isolate the variable? Your child will feel infinitely more successful when he figures out the solution and not you. Letting him find his own answers gives him ownership over his education and allows him control over his life, both of which build self-confidence. It builds the belief that he can do hard things all by himself, and even instills a desire to challenge himself to do more hard things. Quick question. Do you really believe your child can do this? Because if you don't, that's a bigger problem that should be addressed first before we continue. I love how Charlotte Mason put it. She said, "Anxiety is contagious, so you need to have faith and have fun and enjoy this process." Kids can govern themselves. Just write a list on your whiteboard and tell your children that their responsibilities and what the consequences will be. I hope these 7 suggestions and the formula will help you to be able to motivate your children to love math and want to work at it voluntarily without you having to beg or plead or yell. Really, print off the formula and post it somewhere you'll see it often. When you're considering tactics for motivating your children, ask yourself what category your tactic falls under. Will it build your child's confidence and provide satisfaction, or will it give him stress and pressure? Good luck to you, my fellow homeschool moms. We did not choose the easiest road, but we chose the most rewarding. The work you do within the walls of your home will be felt for eternity. You can see some of the math games I use in my homeschool at my blog, orisonorchards.com.